Hi everyone, welcome back. Today we're going to continue through paper 3. We're on question 10, so let's take a look. In a sale, the normal prices are reduced by 15%. Amina buys a dress in the sale for £46.75. Work out the normal price of the dress. So the first thing to notice is that we've got the price reduced by 15%. So if we write that down, it's the same as 100% minus 15%. So what we're looking for is 85%. However, we can see here that this is the reduced price of the dress. So if we convert 85% to a decimal by dividing by 100, we get 0.85. So we know that this price here is equal to 0.85, which is the whole reduction, times a value we don't know yet. So we know that this is the reduced price, reduction is 15%, so 0.85 times this equals this. So in order to find what x is, we can just divide both sides by 0.85. So in this case, get your calculator, and we just do £46.75 divided by 0.85, which is 55. Now I know that could seem a bit complicated, but if we do it the other way around and we say, oh, I've got a dress for £55 and I want to reduce it by 15%, then in that case we would do times 0.85, and then that would equal £46.75. So we're just doing this, but without this value. And we get 55. Question 11. OAB is a sector of a circle with centre O and radius 4.7. The sector has a perimeter of 34.3 meters. Find the size of the reflex angle AOB. Give your answer correct to the nearest degree. So we first look at this question. It's a question about the arc length and the perimeter of the sector. The main thing to notice is that we're asked for a reflex angle here. We also have the full perimeter of the sector, and we know here that the radius is 4.7. So we're trying to figure out what this arc length here is, plus these two. So we know that the full perimeter is the arc length plus 2 times the radius, and that equals 34.3. Well, we know, let's put the arc length as A for now, and we know that R is 4.7, so 2 times 4.7, which is 1, 2, equals 34.3. So if we get our calculator and we do 2 times 4.7, that's 9.4, and then we've got A plus 9.4 equals 34.3. And then we just take 9.4 away from both sides, so 34.3 minus 9.4 equals 24.9, so A equals 24.9, where A is the arc length. So we know that the arc length here is 24.9. So the next part would be to know that to measure an arc length, we use the formula theta over 360 degrees times 2 pi r is equal to, and in this case, the arc length is 24.9. So now we have a full equation where we can figure out what theta is. So we'll rewrite it here, and we'll just fill in what we know, which is r, which is 4.7, equals 24.9. And then we want to rearrange this so that we just have theta on one side. So I'll just come up here for this, and we'll do, so what we want to do first is multiply 2 by 4.7 to get 9.4 again, which means we have theta over 360 times pi 9.4 equals 24.9. And then we can just divide 24.9 by pi times 9.4. So theta over 360 equals 24.9 divided by pi 9.4. There we go. And then we'll divide all of this, or we'll multiply all of this, sorry, by 360, because we'll cancel out this, which means that theta is actually equal to this here. Okay, so if we type that in our calculator, we can do that all in one go. We can do, and that equals 303.54 degrees. Well, if we look here, it says give your answer correct to the nearest degree. So the nearest degree would be 304 degrees. And we know 304 degrees is a reflex angle because it's larger than 180 on this way. So 304 degrees is the answer. Question 12. Rudy invests £4,500 in a savings account. He gets compound interest at a rate of 2.4% for the first year and 1.8% for each extra year. Work out the value of Rudy's investment at the end of 3 years. So have a little think about what you think the first step might be here. So the first step I would do is to convert these percentages into decimals. So for the first year, we do 2.4 over 100, which equals 0.024. And for the second year, it's 1.8 over 100, which equals 0.018. Okay, so now it says a compound interest. So for the first year, we're just going to do the total times 1, which is itself. I'm going to add the 1 to this decimal here, which means we just replace this 0 with a 1, 1.024, and that way we'll get the first year's interest rate with itself added on. So 4,500 times 1.024, make sure you put the 0 in there, and that's 4608 for the first year. Now the second year is 0.018. Again, we don't just want to find out what the actual interest is, we want to add the interest on top. So we include the 1 again. So in this case, we're going to do 4608 times 1.018, where we've added the 1 onto here. And then we're actually going to square this as well, because we're doing this same thing twice. So 4608 times 1.018 squared, because that's 2 years. For each extra year at the end of 3 years, so that's 2 years, equals 4775.38. And then what does the question ask for? It doesn't give an amount, so I'd give it in pence. So it'd be 4775 and 38 pence, rounded to pence. Bruno buys a car for £7,500. The value of the car depreciates by X% each year. At the end of 2 years, the value of the car is 4,107. Work out the value of X. Now, if the percentage is decreasing each year, the percentage will have to be less than 100%. So the decimal for less than 100% will have to be less than 1. That means the number we're looking for is X over 100, because it needs to be less than 1. Next, we know that the starting price is 7,500, and we need to multiply that by itself, which is this 1, minus the depreciation cost, which is X over 100. And then it says 2 years, so we're going to square it because there's 2 years there. And we know that equals 4107. So now we just need to work this out algebraically. So we'll divide both sides divides by 7,500, and we'll get 1 minus x over 100 squared equals 4107 over 7,500. And then we'll square root each side. So 1 minus x over 100 equals the square root of 4107 over 7,500. And then what we'll do is we will minus 1 from this. So minus x over 100 equals square root 4107 over 7,500 minus 1. Now, to make this a bit easier here, we will do this calculation because it's a little bit complicated. So we'll do 4107 divided by 7,500 and find the square root of it, which is 37 over 50. And then we'll take away this 1 and we get minus 13 over 50. So up here, we get minus x over 100 equals minus 13 over 50. Now we're nearly there. We just need to multiply both sides by minus 100. So if we multiply what we have on our calculator here by minus 100, we get x equals 26. And there we can see that the car depreciates by 26% each year. And if you wanted to check that, you could easily do it on your calculator and you could say, okay, 7,500 times 1 minus 0.26, because it's depreciating, 5,550. And if we do it one more time, we do times 1 minus 0.26, 4,107. So the answer is 26. Question 13. ABC and AED are straight lines. BE and CD are parallel. BE equals 4.2, CD is 6.3, AC is 10.8. Work out the area of the trapezium BCDE. BCDE. So what we first notice here is that the lines are parallel, which is important, which means we can see that we've actually got one triangle here, and we've got a similar larger triangle here. So the main thing to notice is that if we get the area of the big triangle and we take away the area of the small triangle here, we'll be left with the area of this. So we don't actually have to use any calculations for the area of a trapezium. So the area of the large triangle, so AC is 10.8, CD is 6.3, and BE is 4.2. Okay, so as you can see, the area of a triangle is half the base times the height. So for the larger triangle, we do half, the base is 10.8, times the height, which is 6.3. And we get that to be, with our calculator, 34.02. So using the rest of this diagram, we can see that these triangles are similar, which means that the ratio from this to this will be the same as the ratio from this long side to A to B. So A to B, we need to figure out what length this is. So we can see that 6.3 over 4.2, if we put that in our calculator, is 3 to 2, or 3 over 2. So 3 over 2 is equal to 10.8 over something. So all we can do here is, if we take 10.8 and we divide it by 3 and times it by 2, we get 7.2. So 7.2 is the length of this side. And then we just do the same as before. This was part 1. And part 2 is going to be a half times 7.2 times the height here of 4.2 equals 15.12. So we have the area of the large triangle and the area of the small triangle. So now all we need to do is do 34.02 minus 15.12, which equals 18.9. So 18.9 centimeters squared. Question 14. Prove algebraically that 0.462 recurring can be written as 229 over 495. So if we let x equals 0.46262 and so on, and we multiply it by 10, we can get 10x equals 4.6262 and so on. Now we want these recurring decimals to be on the left-hand side of the decimal point as well. So we're actually also going to multiply by 100. So we get 1000x equals 462.6262 recurring. Now we can see here that these two equations have the same decimal points. So if we do 1000x minus 10x, we actually get this minus this. I'll put it under here to be clear, which will cancel out the decimal. So in this case, 1000x minus 10x is 990x equals 462. These decimals cancel out. Minus 4 is 458. And then to find out what x is, we just divide both sides by 990. So x equals 458 divided by 990. And that will simplify to what we have there of 229,495. And we can do this now, calculate. If you do 458 divided by 990, you see you get 229 over 495. So the main concept here was creating expressions in terms of 10 and 1,000 so that we could take away the decimal and get rid of the decimal to make it easy. Question 15. Make P the subject of the formula here. So the first thing we want to do is we want to get rid of this fraction. And usually when you're rearranging expressions, you want to get rid of the fraction. So if we write this as T, 5 minus 2P equals 2P minus 3. We've multiplied both sides by 5 minus 2P, and we now have this. What do you think the next step would be? So the next step for me would be easier to expand all the brackets. So we're going to get rid of these brackets. So we're going to do 5t minus 2pt equals 4p minus 6. We're looking for p in this formula. And at the moment, we have 1p on this side and 1p on this side of the equation. So what do you think the next step would be? Well, it'd be right if you said, we want to get all the p's on the same side of the equation. In this case, it's easier to add 2 to pt to this side and add 6 to this side. So if we do 5t, add 6 to both sides, and then add 2pt to both sides, we get 4p plus 2pt. And now this is looking a lot better now because we've got these p's on the same side, so we can isolate them now. And the way we do that is we're just going to factorize this side here. So we have 5t plus 6 equals p, because we're taking the p out, 4 plus 2t. And now, because this is multiplied by this bracket, we just need to divide both sides by this. So we end up with p equals 5t plus 6 over 4 plus 2t. And that's the answer.